should say good morning, or I think it's it's noon time now. I'm sorry, I was called to the Supreme Court, and when the Chief Justice calls you, you don't say no, so I had to adjust the time. I was listening to the previous speaker. It was a very nice talk. And for a gastroenterologist, I have to say, we don't just say go eat, we tell them what to eat. But a lot of my slides were stolen by you, so you'd be surprised how much we are into lifestyle choices now. World is changing, the doctors are changing, and I tell you as a PhD, when you talked about we forget to tell them to eat, it just struck home that some of those things are exactly what I'm going to say. So let's start off. And I think most of you here, Shagufta was telling me that there's lots of non-doctors. Am I right? Right, so I try to keep my talk simple. It's very difficult for a doctor to talk non-doctor, which I tried because we counsel families and this is what we were trying. So, bear with me if there's some doctory stuff in there, but most of it will be something that so you chose this, you stole my saying. So, yes, I put that on my slide all the time, that thy food shall be I put it in a different way, that thy food shall be thy remedy. But what happens? Why 5 million children die due to malnutrition? One child dies every 7 seconds, and as we have been speaking, hundreds have died. And malnutrition doesn't come just from lack of food. It's a myth that it comes from lack of food. It comes from lack of understanding. And this is a nice cartoon from Africa, and you can see if a child is having diarrhea, what are the opinions of the rest of the people? And they're no different from a lot of opinions given by the people in Pakistan, the family. Koi kehta hai, somebody will say, kuch na do khane ko, keep him hungry, starve him, just give him water. And only one sensible person says, well, you need to take advice. Somebody gives some good advice too. But majority, and we are a nation of myths and misconceptions about food. Every single time I am advising on something, mother, even if I say, oh, it's okay, it's just a viral infection, give some paracetamol, the fever is going to come down. The mother turns around and says, can he eat? What should I give him? Can he eat? Or should I'm like, what do you mean, can he eat? Of course he can eat. Okay, give me an antibiotic. So the food myths and misconceptions are so much there that all the time the question is the wrong question, what to stop. The question is never, what is the best thing to give him right now? It's what should I stop? Which in our language we call parhez. That's not a word you're familiar with, but the doctors here in Pakistan they just want to starve the kids. In fever, in flu, in any illness, they want to starve the kid. So what happens? These are patients from my ward. So you can imagine why when you talk about nutrition and food and the importance of it, why it strikes home so much. That every time the child is sick, the mother just stops giving something. Solids are stopped. May give tea or juice in a bottle. This leads to a vicious cycle of malnutrition. And malnutrition then begets more disease for us. And these are 2 kids admitted just with those problems. And again, faces of malnutrition in Pakistan. These kids they did not have shortage of food at home. The mothers made wrong choices. And you'd be amazed the kind of choices they make. The tea sweetener is considered milk, the tea whitener, not the sweetener, the whitener. And they put it in glasses or bottles and give it to the children. I had to go to court to ask for a label to put in Urdu and say, this is not milk, okay, stop giving it. So the choices of food matter. And these kids, they're not looking like that because they didn't have food at home. Where do I have to direct it for it to be quick? Okay. This is just another thing. She's sitting in my clinic. Now, this was a well 3-year-old, had typhoid fever, and mother didn't give anything. So 4 kilograms went down. So this kid stayed on what? Just milk and juice? Everything was prohibited. Something was prohibited by the aunt, something was by the grandmother, and say, don't eat this, don't eat that. You have enteric fever, you have typhoid fever. How can you give him bread, grains? How can you give him this? So this is what happened to her. She's sitting in my clinic looking like that. And then we are a country. I come from a country where you have these malnourished mothers producing malnourished babies. And again, I'm saying it's not that there is shortage of food at home. It's the wrong choice of food. Then you have little kids raising little kids. This kid was admitted because she was sick, but her brother was sick and she was the one looking after. Their mother used to go away because she probably was working. So again, as the lady before me was highlighting, you want a good life, you want a long life, look after it. Think of what you're eating, think of what you're doing. And so really, we are going to be sitting in 10, 15 years, you guys are younger, me faster, I'll be sitting there on that chair thinking the same thing. And so public health priorities in Pakistan, probably that's why we are so tuned to thinking drugs, medicines, antibiotics. You see a lot of communicable diseases. But then, yes, there's a lots of other stuff there too. And I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the bacteria which are in your body, which we call the human microbiome. Now, what all you're hearing today, what happens if we eat plants, grains, what happens to us, why we are healthy, if we eat a particular thing, not a lot of steaks, why do we avoid heart disease and diabetes, rests in the concept of what is in our bowel, what bacteria do we carry. That is called the human microbiome. Okay, so just to give you a concept of everything which ultimate the consequence of, be it stress, be it food, something happens inside us to our microbiome. Okay, so what are we? The concepts has changed in the past 10 years enormously. We are superorganisms, and we have a large number of different organisms living in us. So in this superorganism called a human being, only 10% of the DNA or the cells, they're actually human. So you and I are carrying millions of genes inside our bowel which don't belong to us. And remember, nature never does anything without a reason. So what are we? We are only 10% human genes, and a whole bunch of it is bacterial genes, 90%. That's interesting. Okay? So the vast majority of the microorganisms which inhabit the human gut, large number are in your colon, in your large bowel. So you have a small bowel and you have a large bowel. So the large bowel has this what we call the gut microbiota. And if we were to put them on a weighing machine, just bacteria which can be seen only by a microscope, but if you put them together and you weigh them, they weigh 1.5 kilo. That's a whole bunch of bacteria. Again, as I said, what is their importance? Why did God put them there? And we know nature never does anything without a reason. So there's got to be a reason which is linked to our body, our health, our futures. Now, looking at them, you have more bacteria than the total cells in your body, more than the total humans who have ever walked this earth are inside in each and every one of you. And you carry a large bunch of foreign DNA, but a large number of them we still haven't been able to culture. It's a mystery, 80% of them. We've only been able to culture some 15-20%. Now, a lot of people consider bacteria to be bad. So that is why there was this era in Europe and in the West when everything, counter of the kitchen, the floor, and everything was wiped clean with Lysol. Kill them all. Kill the good bacteria too. And we are on the other extreme. Well, you need to clean. So don't take home the message that you don't need to clean. You need to clean and you need to drink clean water. But the over-cleaning thing, which we call the hygiene hypothesis in Europe, clean everything and you kill the good bacteria. And what happened to them? We'll come to it. That they got a different pattern of disease than us. We have a different pattern. So these don't kill the good bacteria. Bacteria were put there for a reason as well. And so you have in our bowels, there are friendly bacteria and there's some very dangerous bad ones. So this is just like a diagram of looking at the unfriendly and the friendly. Now, I think one slide. Okay, the written part somewhere disappeared on it. I put in a slide to say, what is dysbiosis? You hear this term all the time. What is dysbiosis? Dysbiosis is an imbalance between good and bad bacteria. How many of you sitting here who are thinking, oh, jo subah khaya tha, it's not agreeing. Dakar aa rahe hain thode se. I'm feeling a little heartburn. So thinking of your bowels or your GIT or your stomach when you should be listening to me is dysbiosis. So dysbiosis comes from the imbalance of the good and bad bacteria. And we'll come to the causes of the imbalance, which the lady before has actually been trying to tell you. It's the choices we make. Every choice of eating or doing something that you make impacts your microbiome. It's that sensitive. It's interesting. You would think it can't happen like that, but it does, and I'll prove it to you. So how do we get healthy microbiome? So you and I don't have dysbiosis, and we lead healthier lives. Well, the journey starts from birth. And whether you're born vaginally or you're born by cesarean, it also determines. So as the child comes out from the normal delivery, from the birth canal, the child is exposed to the bacteria in the birth canal. That's needed. As I said, nature doesn't do anything without reason. Not only that, the normal delivery causes more bonding because of oxytocin, which is released while you're. But here is the cesarean sections. Forgive me for the spelling mistake there. The baby pops out in a different way. You just take him out. Do a cesarean when it's needed to save the life of the baby and the mother. But do you think in your country, every cesarean which is happening is right? Almost 100% of you would agree. Now, WHO actually gave a statement on the alarming numbers of cesareans that we are doing. But we are harming kids in that way. We are depriving them of the bacteria in the birth canal which they need to acquire a good microbiome. So then, after coming out, the best, most important determinant of a lifetime is the choice of feeding. Are you going to breastfeed this baby, or are you just going to take it easy and say, oh, there's not enough milk, oh, I have to work. So you hear a lot of myths and misperception here as well. And this whole milk industry, I don't know if we have any from the milk industry, hopefully not, because they're not even allowed to enter my clinic. And they're only allowed to give the card to the secretary and go away, because they are the spoilers of the health of my children in Pakistan. And this is an industry which is full of bribes, and the way they maneuver the nurses and the doctors in the maternity units and the neonatal units of private hospitals, government hospitals, that's another tale. But if you look at it, I would say this is the single most important determinant of how you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. So breastfed babies develop a healthy, good, friendly bacterial microbiome. And even a cow is sensible. Cow knows my baby should have my milk. And what are we doing? We are giving human babies cow milk or buffalo milk. And in fact, in Pakistan, it's mainly buffalo milk because we don't have enough cows. So that is even more stupid. But where do we stand? I think it's right from the top to the bottom, from the biggest hierarchy, the government policy makers, to the end users, to the middle ones like doctors, health providers. We have failed our kids. They are taking artificial milk. So there you are. You have started on a bad microbiome. So what happens in your neonatal period determines your health for your lifetime. Just remember that. What happens in infancy determines your lifetime health choice. Are we going to be fat? Are we going to be thin? There has been research to show that children who have had no breast milk in the first year, they have had more than one course of antibiotic in the first year, or their food choices, or they have been cesarean deliveries and not, or they were poor guys, they were like in the neonatal ICU, they're more likely to be obese because you altered their microbiome. So they're going to be fat adults with diabetes and heart disease and so your choice starts from the beginning. So when you counsel a mother right from her time when she has not delivered the baby, let her make the right choices. So being fat and thin. So there is a very interesting study going on, and which has now moved from the animal to the human phase, if you have read it in Canada, because in the animal phase, they took the bacteria from the colon of thin people and put them in, or thin animals, and put them in the bowel of fat animals. And the fat animals became thinner. And they had to continue to give that infusion. And then the reverse was true, that you take the bacteria of the fat animals from their colon and inject it into the thin ones, and they became fat. So this is now hugely funded by Canada government in Toronto, and doing it on humans. But the problem is, once you have acquired a microbiome, you can't keep, because you have to keep instilling the other one. How many times will you get a fecal transplant, as we call it? You put bacteria, you take the feces of thin people, and you take out their bacteria and you transplant it into fat people, and you keep transplanting it, and it's a nightmare, but it changes it. It changes the person. Now think about it. If you had the option to develop that healthy microbiome in infancy, and think about the times you have fed your children the wrong milk or given them useless antibiotics and how it impacts the life, then you would go back and probably do things differently. So the bacteria in your bowel determine whether you're going to be having, a lot of the impact on having diabetes, obesity, heart disease, everything. And then we come to developmental disorders, CNS disorders, like behavioral, autistic spectrum disorders. Have you heard of autism? A lot of you. It's a nightmare for a mother to have an autistic child. And I tell you, families suffer. But there is and we'll come to that. I think this slide I will go through. What I was telling you, the factors which influence the microbiome, I've highlighted some very important ones, but the rest are also important. But I think we should also think of, there are chemicals in your drinking waters. Then a very important thing, stress. We talked about cesarean birth, lack of breastfeeding, whether you're eating good plant, amount of food is there or not. You have a lot of refined sugar in your diet. And let's talk about stress. Stress. Do you think stress affects your bacteria? Exactly. So it does. And this is when we talked about the dysbiosis. And we'll talk about stress and the other things as well. Now, when the baby is born and in the first year, the same time the brain is developing. The very critical phase of brain development is going on. So whatever happens in your bowel, and now we really know where the true brain is, where the true life, it's your bowel. And somebody before, I think that was some famous guy who said, the best thing you can have is a healthy set of bowels. And that is so true. I think because the real brain lies here. The real driving force lies in your bowel. It lies in your gut. So when the brain is developing, whatever bacteria that you are having there, which are affected by the food choices, by stress, by antibiotics, seem to have an impact on the neuronal development in the brain. And we call that the gut-brain axis. And a lot is written about it. Let's not overread into it, but let's not ignore it as well. That doesn't mean any child with autism, you're just going to stop this and that and this and that. But think about it. In the critical developing phase of the brain, what are we feeding the child? What are we giving the child? And what is happening to the brain at that time? Now, so dysbiosis during critical brain development can cause developmental disorders like autism, autistic spectrum disorders, and these poor children for the lifetime. It's a bad life to spend when you're just living with yourself, but then the parents who are living with the child are also in a terrible nightmare. Now stress, there's so many papers written on it. They looked at the bacteria in the bowels of children who came from happy families versus, you have an abusive alcoholic father, or there's a lot of violence which they're seeing in the family. So the poor kids, you would have thought that it's not going to affect the bowel, maybe it affects their psyche, but it affects both. Maybe they're linked also. So the bacteria in the bowel of these children were more deleterious, not healthy microbiome, but the healthy microbiome was in the happy kids who had not seen conflict. So this is a conflict response. Your body also responds to it, but not all responses are good. So they learn to live in that environment, and they're shaped to live in a stressful environment. And then what everybody says, and I think diet is one of the most, as we talked about feeding, diet is the most important factor that influences the composition, the type, the diversity of your intestinal microbiota, right? So Western diet, and I can't call it Western diet any longer, because what is happening in your country, the educated West is moving away from certain things, while our educated elite thinks, oh, it's fashionable to go every day to the fast food restaurant. So when I talk to my patients in the clinic and I say, why did he gain that much weight? And since the last visit, he's gained like 7 kilograms. I mean, what is he eating? So every day they're eating out, or they are asking for, the take homes. And they say, oh, doctor, he just loves this dash dash, I won't take the names of the fast food restaurants, and he orders it at home, and we give him money, and they have the outlet even in their school. And if you recall, earlier this year with the Food Authority, we made a legislation, I had run after it for 1 year, that no soda drink will be served in the schools under 2 under 18 children. And I've had huge pressure from the drink companies. And so with that legislation, we haven't been able to add the fast food thing in it, but soon may be. So this diet leads to all the problems. So you have these refined carbs. I tell everybody, everything which is white is actually not necessarily the white sugar, the white flour, and you go to the brown things, and these things are destroying our health. And so we are getting rid of the good microbes. We are getting inflammatory bowel diseases, among many others. And look at the curse of the fast food. It's not just that you have to go out. You are keeping frozen fast food in your freezers. You are having these frozen nuggets and these sausages, and I don't know, there's a whole bunch of them. And every child takes it on breakfast, takes it to his school. And if I say, hey, stop buying those nuggets, so one day this big nugget company guy came to me. And he said, Dr. Saba, you know what, I've heard that you are on a campaign against us. I said, absolutely not against you personally. I'm against this business of selling these so-called chicken nuggets, which I actually asked Food Authority to analyze. And guess how much actual chicken protein was there? Just make a wild guess. It was under 10%, it was 6%. And how much fat was there? It's pre-fried actually. So it is a processed meat full of fat, very little actual chicken protein. It was processed. So they put it in the freezer all the time. Subah, in the morning, the kid gets it to school. In the evening, they come and eat it. So this industry is thriving. Everybody has put their hand into that. And as she rightly said, the food industry doesn't really care about your health. They don't. So you have to be careful to what you eat. And then you won't be knowing it. But if I do an ultrasound in all the people sitting here, I tell you, I know my proportion of fatty liver in Pakistan. You don't have to be fat to have a fatty liver in Pakistan. When I started sending my patients for liver transplant, I used to send healthy parents as donors. And they started calling me and said, Dr. Huma, what's wrong with all these young men and women, these fathers and mothers who have fatty livers? And if you talk to the adult colleagues, I have teenagers who have fatty livers. So this fatty liver epidemic is due to your choice of food. So you start off with a healthy liver, you have a bit of fat, you get cirrhosis, and you get malignancy in that liver. So your life choices made you destroy your own liver. So why don't we avoid diseases intelligently? Instead of treating them with various drugs, build a healthy microbiome. When there is war, when you treat them with antibiotics and things, you have collateral damage. So instead of killing bacteria with antibiotics and having collateral damage and producing this kind of a child, we should have our own friendly bacteria killing or suppressing the bad ones. So have a healthy microbiome, eat healthy, eat a lot of plant-based food as well, and yes, exercise. So I mean, that's a very angry way of saying it. What fits your busy schedule better, exercising an hour or being dead 24 hours a day? So I think exercise, and the last two slides are on just telling you how painful it is in Pakistan to see the wrong choices people make. And this is the last two slides on this 3-year-old. There are many like that. I just took one for you. He had loose stools. Wherever he went, he got antibiotics. Nobody really told him what to eat and what to drink. And he was told to restrict everything, and he was given diluted milk. So loose stools persisted, and then blood started coming out. And then he was referred to me. So what was happening to him? Now this, incidentally, on his abdomen, when he became very sick, they took him to a local healer. And he said, well, you know, there is something in his belly and we have to burn it. So he put a lot of chemicals and heat, and you know, he got a gangrene of part of his muscles. So when the antibiotics, they got stepped up when he got blood, and he was admitted, and he was taking only Sago. We admitted in our ICU, he tested in the stool a very dangerous spore. We all carry that spore in a very small amount in our intestines. But when we make wrong choices and take a lot of antibiotics, this terribly dangerous spore gets more and more. And with excessive use, you kill the good bacteria, and the deadly ones like C. diff proliferate, and that's, oh God, this is a nightmare trying to do it like this. Okay. So this is the intestine of that child, full of pus, full of abscesses. He actually didn't make it. So in summary, we can come to it, I think whatever we said, that our microbiome defines our health. What we are we going to have joint pains? Are we going to have allergy? Joint pains have a huge link with your microbiome. Allergic diseases, autoimmune diseases. As we said in the West, too much hygiene, we kill the good bacteria, you have autoimmune diseases like diabetes, asthma, allergies. So in the entire journey, starting now, infancy is the critical period. But in the entire journey, your gut drives your health. Your gut drives your health. And the critical periods of the brain development, they need a healthy bowel and good choices of food. And so your diet, your lifestyle plays a major role in determining whether we carry a healthy ecosystem, it's an ecosystem in us, or a dangerous one. Too much reliance on medications and their overuse produces an imbalance between the good and bad bacteria. So rely on food choices, exercise, healthy lifestyle, and not on medications. I'm a doctor standing here, and I'm telling you that. Majority of the times in my clinic, I'm cutting off prescriptions. Your average doctor writes 6 drugs. That is so wrong. So try to find healing without useless drugs. Take them when you need them. So yes, this is not alternative medicine anymore. So I can't be scolded that I'm a doctor and looking at alternative medicine. This is medicine now. So we need to highlight that as doctors also, that this is important for all of us to change our lifestyle choices. Thank you.